Stanley Milgram predicted that only about 1 or 2% of participants would fully obey an experimenter's instructions to deliver what they believed were increasingly painful, ultimately dangerous electric shocks to another person. The actual result stunned the field. Roughly two-thirds of participants delivered the maximum shock level. Milgram's experiment remains one of psychology's most famous, most debated, and most frequently misunderstood studies. Stanley Milgram's 1961 to 1963 experiments recruited ordinary adult volunteers to participate in what they were told was a study on learning and memory, instructing them, in the role of teacher, to administer increasingly severe electric shocks, ranging up to a labeled 450 volts marked danger, severe shock, to a learner, actually a Confederate who received no real shocks. Each time the learner answered incorrectly, while an experimenter in a lab coat calmly instructed the participant to continue whenever they expressed hesitation or a desire to stop. In Milgram's original baseline experimental condition, approximately 65% of participants continued administering shocks all the way to the maximum 450-volt level, despite the learner's recorded screams of pain, pleas to stop, and eventual ominous silence, simply because the experimenter, a mere authority figure with no actual power to punish or reward the participant, calmly instructed them to continue. This finding, replicated in numerous variations, demonstrated a capacity for destructive obedience to authority far exceeding what psychologists and the general public had predicted beforehand. Milgram's numerous experimental variations found that obedience rates dropped substantially as physical and psychological proximity to the victim increased. Obedience fell when the learner was in the same room as the participant compared to a separate room, and fell even further when the procedure required the participant to physically hold the learner's hand onto the shock plate themselves, demonstrating that psychological distance from the direct consequences of one's actions substantially facilitates destructive obedience. Obedience rates dropped substantially when the experiment was relocated from Yale University's prestigious campus to a nondescript off-campus office building, indicating that perceived institutional legitimacy of the authority figure meaningfully affects obedience. Obedience also dropped dramatically, to roughly 10%, when participants observed two Confederate peers refuse to continue administering shocks before the real participant's turn, demonstrating that the presence of even a small number of disobedient peers can powerfully undermine an authority figure's influence. Milgram's experiments generated substantial ethical controversy, since many participants displayed genuine, significant distress during the procedure, including visible sweating, trembling, and in some documented cases, nervous laughter alongside real anguish. And the study relied on substantial deception about the study's true purpose and the learner's actual safety. These ethical concerns directly and substantially contributed to the establishment of modern institutional review board requirements, informed consent standards, and debriefing protocols now mandatory in psychological research, reflecting how Milgram's study reshaped research ethics as significantly as it reshaped the understanding of obedience itself. Jerry Berger's 2009 partial replication of Milgram's paradigm, conducted under modern ethical guidelines that stopped the procedure at a much lower voltage threshold and included enhanced screening and immediate debriefing, found obedience rates strikingly similar to Milgram's original 1960s findings, suggesting the phenomenon of destructive obedience to authority is not simply an artifact of a particular historical period or cultural moment, but reflects a more general and persistent feature of human social psychology under specific situational conditions. Milgram's obedience experiments revealed an uncomfortable but scientifically robust truth about human behavior. Ordinary people, absent any unusual malice, will often comply with clearly harmful instructions from a perceived legitimate authority figure. Understanding the specific situational factors that increase or decrease this obedience, proximity, legitimacy, and peer example, offers practical insight into both preventing harmful compliance and understanding historical atrocities carried out by ordinary people.